All right, everybody, welcome to Imagine Academy Quarantine Session number 2. My name is Neela. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Imagine. And just before we get things started here today, I just want to give you a couple of ground rules. But before that, I'm going to introduce our presenters. We've got Adrienne Slevin today from 3D Systems. They are the maker of the NextDent 5100 3D printer. Definitely one of the industry-leading 3D printers out there. If you're in the market for one, strongly recommend you consider it. They also produce one of the greatest varieties of 3D printing resins in the industry, also under the NextDent name brand. So Adrienne's going to be talking first today to walk us through the printing process for a digital denture, upper and lower. And then after that, we're going to have George Cowburn, who did a lot of the presenting yesterday. George is one of the co-founders of Perfit Dental Solutions. They're known up in Canada for being one of the best, highest-end digital denture producers, some of the most accurate digital dentures out there. So George is going to be stepping in second today to show us some of the aesthetic finishing practices. But before that, a couple of housekeeping things. Please keep your mics and your cameras off throughout the presentation. That'll allow us to focus on the presenters. And then also save your Q&A as best you can for the end. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar today. If you do have some questions throughout the presentation, feel free to ask them, but just send them over through the chat box, which you can find on the lower portion of your Zoom screen there. Similarly, if there are any problems throughout the presentation today, the audio is bad, the video is bad, anything like that, send those to me privately on the chat function there at the bottom of the screen as well. Two more things. This course is accredited for a continuing education credit. So if you're a CDT and you want that CE credit, just give me your name and your CDT number on the chat function there throughout the presentation. I'll collect those at the end and get you all registered for your CE credit. And then last but not least, let's see here, CE credits, questions at the end. No, I guess that's about it. So without any further ado, oh, I know what I was going to mention. Sorry about that. If you missed yesterday's course, we are going to be posting that on our YouTube channel at the end of this week or early next week. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have a link to it on our website, imagineusa.com, and we'll be posting it on our YouTube feed. So if you're catching today, but you missed yesterday, you can definitely catch up on that. There was a lot of good stuff in there as well. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Adrienne Slevin to do the presentation here for the 3D printing aspect. Adrienne, are you unmuted there?
I am now. Can you
there you
hear
are.
me?
Hey, Adrienne.
Hi.
Take it away.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the agenda today that I'm going to go through. So we're going to do a little review on the nesting that we covered yesterday. I'm going to go ahead and print and process live and give you some tips and tricks. You can find a lot of this on our user manual, but I'd like to show you some things that I've found to make life a little bit easier when printing. I'm going to go ahead and assemble some dentures, and then I'll do a brief review on a PowerPoint, and I will share that with you all through Neil later for your reference. And then I'll hand it over to Perfit. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my 3D Sprint now. And we'll cover what we did yesterday. I'll just give you some tricks and tips about nesting quickly. So the first thing that you're going to do is launch your 3D Sprint and connect to your printer. Now I have 2 printers in my office. And by the way, this is a home office, so excuse the, I'm not in the lab today. So when I show you my live views, you'll see how I have it set up. So I'm going to choose my tooth maker, and you hit next. And I'm going to print teeth first, and next, and then choose your shade. After that, you can hit set. We're going to build in 50 micron layers. And now you'll hit file and import. So I like to keep all of my files as technicians, or if you're working in a larger lab or if you're doing something individually, it kind of depends on how you're going to organize your files. So if you have a share file and you have people just dumping in, then you just keep it in a spot and you can import as many as you want all at the same time. And whatever you can't fit in, then can be on your next build. So you can get about 4 full arches on your denture arch cases. I have 2, the designs that George did yesterday. And by the way, the hotkey for that, and I'm going to show that on the PowerPoint as well for your own personal review, is Control-I, and that will automatically open up the import. So the next thing that we're going to do here is, let's see, is we're going to use autoplace. And please put in the chat if my screen is being blocked. I think yesterday that happened, and I want to make sure you can see my full screen. So click autoplace. And something I like to do here is I change my numbers to 0. And this will cram as much as you can in. Obviously, I only have 2, so it really wouldn't make much of a difference. But if you're nesting a lot all day, then just click 0, and it'll cram it in as close as they can. And then click Allow Z Rotation, and that will allow it to rotate it slightly and to put it where it should be inside the plate. And then I'll also change this to 0, and that'll go right to the edge of my build platform. So if you hit Set, you can see now that it'll put it in, and it does a slight angle for me. Now, if I'm in a hurry and I need this case very quickly, it's okay to print these completely horizontal. Now, I do like to print mine with a slight angle. It makes polishing a simple, really simple process. So I would do just something like this, a slight angle. Now, instead of using the transform, you can also use Q, which allows you to move the part around. Or if you're not really into hotkeys, you can hit transform and it'll click on the part and it'll bring up a box. Now, if you hold the button shift, it'll allow you to move the part very off of an angle, so freely. And if you don't hold shift, it will keep it at a 10 degree. So it'll snap it into a degree, as you can see here, okay? Now, if you just drag it down as far as it'll go, it'll stop 3 millimeters above the plate, and that's perfect. So there's nothing you have to worry about there. There's also a little view button here that you can click. And so you can quickly go to different views if you don't feel like spinning around the part with your mouse. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is hit Smart Support. So there's basically just a few steps that you're going to do. You're going to import, autoplace, and Smart Support. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of scenarios in my PowerPoint that show when you would combine your parts on a regular basis. If you don't have parts that are over each other, overlapping, then you will not combine them. It's just a waste of support material. So you'll say no in something like this. So hit Create Supports. And the nice thing that I like about this software is I actually don't have to check my supports. If I see something that's overhanging completely unsupported, then you can hit Modify and you can add it. And I'll show you that on the bases. But on as a general rule, never erase your supports. If you don't like where it has the supports, then you change your orientation with transform or with the Q button, and then you regenerate your supports. When you remove supports, you risk having floating areas that needed support in the first place. So it's really important that you do not erase the supports. Again, if you're doing something like with a removable die, I still stand by that. The tips are very small and you can easily break them off if you clean them right away. But if you remove a support, you may be missing areas, especially like around a margin or something, and even in the seating area. So don't remove supports, just slightly orient them in a different way and then regenerate the support structure. Okay, so now I'm going to add it to the queue. You don't need to check slices, you don't need to check anything like that. This is just a real simple process. I believe in keeping it very simple. It's one of the easiest nesting softwares I've used before, because for once I don't have to check slices. So this is a newer version. You're going to see this later, but we actually put in a quality check. And so by about the end of the month, you're going to see there's a couple new things in there. So we're going to hit Add to Queue. And you can name it something if you'd like. If you have a different technician that's running the printers and they need to know the names of the jobs, you can. And if not, just hit Add to Queue. So now, depending on your network speed, it'll quickly go in and drop into your printer. I have some more parts pending. And I'm going to go ahead and come back and I'm going to nest the bases for you. Every time you print something, if you want support from somebody, let's say that you weren't happy with the fit or you had a failed print or something like that happened and you would try to push the limits or print something that wasn't indicated, or maybe you were sending it out for a try-in and you might need to reprint it again, then always save your file. I always tell people, save your sprint file. And save it for a week and then go back through and delete all of the cases from last week. But it's really important, especially if you have a question and you're newer at printing. So when you hit close, it'll ask you if you want to save it, and always say yes, and save it in a file on your desktop or wherever you can access it again later. So I'm going to change my material now, and I've already got my printer indicated. So I'm just going to pop over here and hit Next Denture 3D Plus. And I'm going to choose Opaque Pink. And I'm going to hit Set. And now I'm going to bring in my bases. So again, you can hit Control I, and that'll quickly get you to the import. Okay, and I'm going to go Auto Place. Again, I'm going to change my numbers and click Allow Z Access. I do this with every single type of part. Okay, and it put a slight angle for me. What I want to do first is I'm going to create a bar. Now this is going to come out in your 3D sprint around the end of the month. I also have on my YouTube channel how to create a bar, so you can follow that in your software that you have now. And I also have it on the PowerPoint, so I will, again, you'll be able to quick reference that. So I'm going to hit Create Bar, and just click on the two ends, and you need to do this on your lower arches, especially if it's implant-based. Okay. Now, when you're doing your denture bases, there's this thing that happens called cupping on certain shapes and deepness, depths, and undercuts areas. So what we've done is we've done an extensive amount of testing, and we've decided that if we move our bases to a 65-degree angle like this, that we can actually eliminate those issues, and we can get a very accurate part out on both the upper part of the denture and the lower part of the denture. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate those around. Okay. And then we'll generate our supports. And again, I don't need to combine them because they're not overlapping each other. If they were over each other, then I would say yes. Now, again, like I said, don't remove supports, but if you see something that's overhanging, very unsupported, go ahead and click a support there. And a little bit of support goes a long way. So all you have to do is click a couple of points where there's no support to prevent sagging. And don't remove supports. Okay? And now I can add that to my queue. Now a quick portion on the queue, I'll just show you a little bit about that before I go into printing.
Hey, Adrienne, quick question before you move on here. Ken was wondering, why do we need to add a bar? I know you added a bar there just a moment ago, but what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that anything that doesn't have that support bar, such as an orthodontic or a full arch or something like that, it keeps it from warping from the end to the other end. And so we keep that there, and that'll give it the maximum amount of support material between the two. So this way the ends don't go in together. And you'll actually keep that on there until after you post cure, and that'll keep everything stable.
Great, thanks.
So a little bit about the queue here is you can move things around. So let's say that you needed to print your bases next or something like that, or you want to rearrange something for the tech. You can move it up one, or if you select something, you can move it to the top, or you can even delete a job. Now, one more thing is if you weren't, let's say that you guys were nesting at home right now, and you wanted the technician to print, and you brought the laptop home that had the nesting software, or you wanted to orient everything the way you wanted to. You can actually hit print to file, and it will save a file that the printer can read. So you can actually put it on a jump drive and plug the jump drive in, or email the file, and then it will it'll read this file. It's called a PXL file. Okay, so it will do the same thing. It'll slice it, and that's the print file. Oh, I drew on my screen again. Okay, so it'll tell you where it saved it. So if they went into their queue, they could add it from the queue, add job from file, or they could just plug it in or put it onto a jump drive and plug it right into the printer. It's just a little bit about the queue. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, and I'm going to adjust my camera view so you can see the printer, and I'm going to start the prints and show you how that works. I'm going to stop my video for just a second.
Great, and while Adrienne's getting readjusted there, just want to remind everybody, if you missed the first class, which happened yesterday, we're going to be posting that on our YouTube channel next week, so keep an eye out for that. We'll also have a link to it on our website. And then also, if you're hoping to get CE credit for this, that's absolutely available. Just provide me your name and your CDT number on the chat function here on Zoom, and we'll get you lined up for that. Adrienne, looks like you're good to go, right?
Okay, so here we go. So you can't see the screen very well here, but you can see my setup. What I have here is the job is here, ready to go. And I didn't put my tray in yet. I wanted to give you a couple tips about when you remove your resin tray and change it out, and how I like to store my trays and things like that. It's totally fine if you want to keep your tray in all the time. You know, after a month of adding resin and things like that, then you'll definitely want to clean out the tray and start fresh. Or if you get a new lot material, you'll want to do that as well. The way I store my trays is real convenient for me and for the last lab that I've managed. So what you're going to see is, I'm going to show you here. If you see, I got this little shelving unit from Big Lots for like $15. I have a label on them. And as we all know, that the MFH is ceramic filled, so you need to make it convenient for yourself to stir the resin every day or every couple of days if you're not going to be using it. So here it's easy. For me, I know which resin is here, and I have my garages in here, okay? And every day or every couple of days, I can stir my microfilled hybrid in my drawer, okay? That way, the ceramic doesn't settle, and then it takes a really long time to stir and help it release. So it's just a good idea to stir your trays. And that's what I have set up here. Now, what I'm also gonna do, if I'm changing out my material from my printer, see if you guys can see this okay, is in my printer, there is, and as we know, we wanna take really good care of our trays because it lasts a really long time with proper care. So I always have a little wipe ball or a paper towel, and I have this alcohol that I use in this little squirt bottle, and I use it for a lot of different things, but this is one of the reasons. And I just wipe off this lip here. You want to keep everything clean on your printer, but if this lip has any cured resin, you can actually put unnecessary strain on the membrane, and you can eventually pop it. So it's really important that you have a nice, smooth, clean membrane lip or resin tray lip here, okay? Now I'm gonna go ahead and put my resin tray in there. And this is how easy it is. If you don't have the printer, this is how you change out the material between prints. You can see that there's a magnetic arms here with little notches. So you can easily, if you're changing things and doing different things, you can do it with one hand. And it's so easy to not, you don't have to like use both hands and screw something into the right position. So make sure that if your resin's been sitting, and I'm going to show you the chart that I have it over at the other section, that you stir your resin for 30 to 60 seconds. Okay, it's really important that it's all together. So this way, you have the proper shading and the proper properties. So this way, it's the right strength and the right shade. Okay, so usually you would do that for about 30 to 60 seconds. Some labs, if you have technicians working for you, they'll have a timer. And so they'll start the timer. So this way the techs, there's no excuse. They know that they've stirred it for the right amount of time, okay? You'll hear it click. And now we're gonna hit start job, and we can see that those teeth that we just nested are gonna take 29 minutes to build. I've already built this job, so this way I could show you the whole process. And it says, is this the right shade? This requires MFH, shade N1. So when you scan your bottle, you scan the back barcode, and basically, when I grab it off of the roller, I just move it down to an angle. See if you can see the angle that I have it here. The next thing it's going to ask is your print platform clean? We've done that. Is your resin tray full? We've done that. And has the resin been stirred? We've done that. So we're going to hit start job. So you can see that that's starting. Now I'm going to show you the removal process. I have dentures in my other printer here. And I like to keep, and this is handy for me, but every Friday, I basically put 10 sheets of foil on here. And then after I've been printing for a while, every day, I just take off the foil and throw it away. And now I have a fresh pan again. So this is just a cookie sheet from like Dollar Tree. Now, when you have a print that's already done, I really think this is handy, and I don't know if they did this intentionally, but it's really nice because you can actually put your bases up or your teeth up, and you can let it all drain down. Okay, so while you're starting your other printer or whatever you're doing, it'll just all drain off all of the extra resin, and you can recapture it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And I'm going to move our view. There was one more thing I wanted to tell you, actually. So if you have some resin, let's say you stocked up, I wanted to show you how I use my pedestal. When you have resin that's sitting for quite some time, you want it to, let's say that it's going to be a couple months before you use it, and you're storing it. You want to store the bottles on their side. So I'm going to show you how I have my bottles stored. Can you see that? I mean, I guess I'm not expecting a response, but I have everything on its side, and that makes it quicker to mix and easier to get all of that mixture after it's been on that mixer. Okay, so I'm just going to move you over to my cleaning station now. Okay, so Neil, can you just say that you can see everything that we need here?
Everything looks good, Adrienne. Yep.
Okay, so I have now this cookie sheet that I am using. Okay, and I'm going to take off. When you have stuff that's pretty strong, like it's not fragile at all, you can just pull it right off the plate. If you're doing models or something like that, you can just do a little twist and it'll come right off of that plate. So now just rub off all of your supports. And again, you can hear it just snap right off. And just rub them off. Now, something that I want you to know is when you're doing your tooth arches, you don't want to put it in the same alcohol, even if you're cleaning them at the same time, as you did with a different shaded material. You don't want your teeth to get any kind of like grayness or anything like that from your other shades. Everything else I kind of mix up, it doesn't matter, for my first bath. So my first bath is 3 minutes. And you can use large beakers. For my teeth, I would use something smaller because I want to use as little alcohol as possible. And your alcohol is going to be 91%, okay? Now, I know that alcohol is hard to come by lately, so you can use bioethanol as well. And that works just fine, and it's still under the FDA cleared workflow. So now you're going to put your dentures in, and you're going to put them in for 3 minutes. You can see I use old gloves to cover because I don't want to smell the fumes. Okay, and you're going to put it in for 3 minutes. Now I'm going to spare you the noise of the ultrasonic unit. Make sure you don't have your ultrasonic unit heating, by the way. And I already have some dentures that I have cleaned here. But I'm going to show you the teeth. Now I already printed the teeth a little earlier. And this one, they're a little more fragile on the interproximals because those connectors were pretty small. So I'm going to punch these out. Okay, so now you can see that they actually punched out in one. So all I have to do now is just peel off these supports, okay? And I'm going to put them into their own jar because I don't want them to get any shading issues. Okay, so just rub off your supports, and I'm going to show you how to remove if there's any scarring that you saw or an extra support that you didn't get off. But if you do it right after you print it, then it's a lot easier because MFH is really hard, okay? And so if you do it right away and you don't let it sit for a while and you don't put it in the alcohol bath, if you do it right now, it comes off really easily. The longer you wait, the more cured it is, and so it's a little bit harder to get it off without scarring. And so with my alcohol, I'm just gonna fill it right above because I don't wanna waste any alcohol. So I just put it right above the teeth. Now I even have this little jar here. So if I'm doing like castable or pressables, crowns, then I can use very little amount of alcohol. On your second bath, you're gonna do 2 minutes, always fresh alcohol. Now you can see I actually have some old alcohol here and it's all settled. I'll still be able to use that for my first bath. So as soon as this one's too dirty, I'll dump it in and I'll use this funnel and I'll dump it into a bottle and I'll actually let it sit for a while. And you can see even the next day, you can see this looks almost clean, and I just used this all day yesterday for a lot of parts. Okay, and when it gets too bad to use for my first bath, then I dump it into my container over here. So I'm gonna show you right now how I like to clean my trays. So what I did was I bought this container from Walmart, and it is the perfect height for this thing that came. It's called I think it's the platform cleaning stand. It came in the accessories kit. And so I just keep that in there. And now after I've taken the parts off of my build platforms, I put them in there and I use my punch tool and I punch out the remainder. And what's nice is this only takes a minute. It seems like it would take longer, but actually if you time yourself and you've got your parts in your first bath, you're done doing this much quicker. So you need to do 3 rows basically. So you go 1 row, and then the second row, and then the third row. Okay, now after you've punched it, you're just gonna use this and just get any other pieces that are off of it that might have been stuck on there, and use your brush. So I always have my brush. This all came in your accessory kit. I have the same 3 things over here. And I have an old waxing tool because it's been a while since I've waxed. So use your brush to get all of that resin off of there, okay? Now this bath is the really old stuff. So I just keep recycling all of my alcohol. And then I have these white balls and I just put a layer after layer of white balls and my trays are ready to use next time. So I have my second tray here and I'm gonna do the same thing. This one I don't need to punch because I already punched out the 2 parts. So just use your brush. And always use your glove and do this, because if you leave any residual on here, any cured resin, you run the risk of it when it comes down and does the curing, when it's printing next time, you could start wearing a little part into your membrane, and you want to take care of your resin tray. So it's really important, just rub your gloves over there and make sure you don't feel anything. Okay, so now everything's ready to go for the next time. Now I have some parts that are already clean, but remember, 3 minutes in your first bath, 2 minutes in your second bath. And once it comes out of that clean bath, you're gonna take it out.
Hey, Adrienne, real quick question here from the audience. Ken's wondering, do you put any water in your ultrasonic or do you keep it dry when you're putting the beakers in?
No, that's a good question. So what I do is I fill, my ultrasonic has about a little over this much water in there. So yeah, I definitely put water in. I get a lot better agitation.
Great.
And also, sure. Also, something to note is if you're stacking a ton of parts in there, go ahead and flip it. So on your second bath, you're just gonna flip your parts and you will have a better cleaning. So instead of doing them both in the same orientation, you'll flip them over and put them in the second bath. Now, when you go to do your post-cure, it's really important that your parts are dry. I mean, extremely important. If not, the alcohol will boil in those parts. So especially like surgical guides, ortho rigid, anything like that, that you need strength and it's important, make sure that these parts are dry. And you'll just use your hose, your air hose. I don't have that here, but when I dry my parts, can you see my area okay? Or do I need to bring it in here?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay, so as you can see, I have my parts tilted up because then the IPA doesn't pool into there and it actually dries faster. So I will put these all something like this. And also, if you don't, well, like I don't have an air hose here, so I'm gonna leave these sit for 30 minutes. If you did have an air hose, you could just let it sit for 10 minutes after you air hose them out, and that'll be plenty of time for the evaporation. Now, if you printed your teeth, and you're printing your base, then you're not going to put it right in the cure oven. We're gonna assemble the parts, okay? But if you're using milled teeth or you're using carded teeth, then you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna cure it, okay? And then use your cold cure to bond your teeth in. So since we're printing them both, I'm gonna show you how to assemble it now, and then we're gonna put it into our cure oven. So I'm just gonna change the angle here. Can you see my working space?
Yep, looks real good.
Okay, so some people like to use a brush. I actually do. I like to use the brush and the, and I have some fresh mixed resin in here, and this is what I'm using to assemble mine. It's just the regular pink resin that you use to print. And some people use this injector, okay? And this is basically like for Tylenol or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's from Walgreens. So you can do one or the other. You wanna make sure that the resin is mixed. And let me just do a quick mix here. And I'm gonna go over your design parameters one more time before I hand it back over to George. So this way you know that things are going to fit nicely together and you have room for bonding, okay? So what I'm gonna do, and this actually can be a little messy, especially if you're gonna use this injector, but what's nice is you don't have to worry because you can just wipe it off before you put it in. Can you see the denture base, Neil?
Yep, we can see it just fine, Adrienne.
Okay, so I'm gonna apply just a little excess here. Okay, and then I'm gonna put my arch in. Okay, and obviously you would check the fit before to make sure you got all of the extra support material and everything off of there. And I also meant to show you, I have these little snips here and they're just like a real fine, and you can use that to trim off if there's a little scarring, like a little support residual, or you can even use fingernail clippers. I've seen a lot of people do that when they're removing supports off their RPD frames. Or you can use a composite finishing kit. So any kind of wheels that you use for that.
Hey, Adrienne, just want to confirm here a question from the audience that resin that you're brushing on is the exact same resin that you printed the denture base out of, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay, now fill in all the cracks because if you, and you can give it a little tap and that'll help. But if you leave it in, then you'll have to bake it again if there's cracks because you can't, the polish will get in there and then it'll build up plaque or something in their mouth. So you just want to make sure that it's completely sealed. And what I do is I just wipe it off. You can see I have just a little crack there, or a little, need to add just a little bit more. Yep, so just wipe it off, and it's okay if there's a little extra on there. We're gonna polish it anyway. But you just don't want it pooling anywhere because you don't want it to affect like the occlusion or the borders or anything like that. Okay, so once you do get that done, you can also brush on some glaze too, if you wanted to, if you weren't gonna polish.
Hey, Adrienne,
Now yep.
We have an audience member asking, do we need to add bars for the teeth?
No, you don't actually. Have not had any fit issues. We've tested it all out. And they actually fit perfectly in there. So I think it's just bigger bulk of material.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mhm. Now, I like to actually preheat my oven before I do any MFH or denture-based curing. So I would have already turned on my oven for the last maybe 15 minutes. And then it's nice and warm when I put it in there. It's not a requirement, but it's just something that I've adopted. So you're gonna put the base in there, or both your bases in there. And I've got a couple here that are already done. Turn on your oven. And a little trick is you have to go up to 30 minutes. And by the way, I keep my stirring and mixing chart. You can print this out from our user guide. It tells you the amount of time for curing, mixing, and stirring. And it's real convenient to have. And I just laminated it so I could wipe it down since it's part of my workstation. So a little trick is if you hold the P, it'll reset to 0. But if you hold it again, it'll go by 10-minute intervals or increments. And so you can quickly get to 30. You don't have to keep going up with your arrows. Okay, so we're gonna hit start. And now when you pull it out of your oven, you'll have the bonded teeth, okay? And there's a little bit of an oily residue. So just go take it to the steamer and steam it off, and then you're ready to polish. If you find that there's still any type of crack, or not crack, I should say void, that you didn't get it all in, go ahead and fill it with some more resin and put it back in till it's sealed. Okay, I think that's it for that. And I was just gonna go ahead and go over to the PowerPoint presentation and do a little bit of an overview. And if you guys have any more questions about this, you can ask now.
Looks like we got a couple here. Ian is wondering, do you have to cure in glycerin?
No, you do not have to cure in glycerin. We've done all the testing for it. It's not like your normal Dentures. We actually have the same results without glycerin as far as strength goes.
Great, thank you.
Anything else?
Let's see, what model and make is the oven? That looks like the Nextent 5100 oven, right?
Yeah, it is the LC3D cure box or print box. It actually heats up and it has 2 different shades of blue bulbs in it. So this way it can develop the shading of the materials.
And of course, I would be not doing a good job if I didn't mention that everything that we're using here today is available from Imagine. You can find it on our website, imagineusa.com. And if you do have any interest in any of it, you want to have your regional account manager reach out to you, just send me a private message here on the chat line and we can make that happen. John Lee is wondering, what pink shade do you like the best? Adrienne, I know you guys have, what, 4 different denture base shades, right?
We do. I am going to show you all of them. I think that a lot of people are prone to like the opaque pink. It's not very translucent. It kind of looks like Lucitone. It has a little less orange color to it. But I would say the light pink and the opaque pink are the most popular.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation here. And feel free to keep asking questions. Okay, can everybody see my presentation?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So I just wanted to show you a couple of different setups that you can do. So if you don't have room for the pedestal, or you're in a doctor's office or something like that, you don't have to have the pedestal. Actually, there's a lot of people that don't. And you can actually put it onto a countertop as well. You can fit a lot of printers into a small area, or even one printer into a very small area. What I've shown you today is in my house. So it's a very, convenient little area. This is what I've worked with today. So I wanted to show you the full workflow. You don't need glycerin like you asked. This is all you need for every material. So if you decide to do a new workflow, you don't have to buy more stuff from us. And everything that we're developing now is actually going to be used with the same workflow. So you won't have to keep buying anything, even for new materials coming out down the road.
Adrienne, real quick, Ken is wondering, does 99% isopropyl alcohol work just fine?
It does, but it will leave a residual on there, like a white residue. So I would tell you to put 10% water in there. So you have all of the options that you have with your standard bases, okay? So basically, we have the try-in resins. We have, you can print your base and you can use carded teeth. You can mill your base and use carded teeth and use printed teeth. You can print both your teeth and your base, or you can mill your teeth and print your base, or you can use a monoblock and you can use OptiGlaze or something like that to give it some characterization. So what we did was we worked really closely with exocad and 3Shape both. So if you guys are 3Shape users, it's we have DCM or DME files that you can download into them. It's right there on our website. So all you have to do is go to our website, type in 3Shape DME file for Nextent, and you'll find them all. With exocad, I wanted to show you real quick here. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to show you my exocad. In all of the exocads after, I want to say Valletta, but maybe a little bit before that, we placed printers at exocad's locations, and we worked really hard to get the settings down so you guys don't have to dial them down. So when you launch your exocad, you'll probably be surprised to find out that if you hit material configuration, you'll see that there's the Nextent 5100 settings. So go ahead and click that before you enter your case. Then you don't have to know all the minimum settings and parameters. So basically, when you go to enter something, let's say like your denture, you'll see our materials here. And that will allow you to be safe and use the safe parameters. That also helps if you are using 3D Sprint on the same computer, it'll automatically populate 3D Sprint button here. So you don't even have to go find it on your desktop and import it. Once you get your design done, you hit 3D Sprint, it'll ask you which materials, and it'll put them in the right orientation into your build area. So really convenient thing that exocad did.
Hey, Adrienne, a question here from the audience on something you were doing just a moment ago. When you cure the teeth to the base freehand, how do you confirm that VDO is staying the same?
Yeah, so as long as you are using our offsets and our parameters that are recommended, and also another thing to, while you're still figuring that out, is you can use rubber bands as well to make sure you hold it in. Make sure that you take off all of the support material, and it should maintain that. Okay, were you guys seeing my exocad screen when I was demonstrating that?
We actually could not, no.
You could not, okay. So let me just show you one more time. Anything past Valletta, when you open your exocad, go to your material configuration, and these parameters will already be in there. Hit OK, and when you start to enter your case, no matter what it is that you're entering it for, everything that's possible is here in your options. All of the parameters are already set up in there. exocad validated, 3D Systems validated, and also if you do it on the same computer you have 3D Sprint, you'll see this button populate. And that will allow you to go straight into Sprint, and it'll orient everything that you've designed in your Sprint, and it'll also choose the material in Sprint. You won't have to go through that also. Okay, I'm gonna show you one more thing, and then I'll pass it over to George. Well, maybe a couple more things. Okay, so I showed you that live. Can you see my presentation now?
We could just a moment ago.
Okay, sorry about that.
There we go.
Okay, so if you don't have one or the other, or you don't want to use the settings, your base thickness is going to be 2 millimeters for your upper and 2.5 for your lower. If you're printing your teeth, then actually, as a whole, you can get away with that. But if you're just doing the base alone, then make sure you've got a minimum thickness of 2.0 and 2.5. You'll use 300 microns for your glue space. So in your tooth pockets or the glue space in 3Shape. And then as I was telling you before, I already showed you this process, but you'll brush the Denture 3D Plus into your pocket, into the tooth pockets and cure. in the oven. If you're not going to print your teeth, then don't use resin to bond, use cold cure, and make sure you cure your base in advance. We do have a try-on material as well, and I'm happy to go over that probably tomorrow, or, well, I'm sorry, when we get our 3D Systems webinar set up, we'll go over more of the denture workflows. And it's about $350 an arch for try-in. You can do a lot of different characterization as well, or you can just put it in all the same shade. What we used to do in my lab is we would put some pink, just like when we were waxing our try-ins, we would put pink around the tissue, pink wax, just so the patient had a more lifelike look. And then the shade options are the light pink, translucent pink, opaque, red pink, and dark pink. And here, I've noticed that the most popular ones are light pink and opaque pink. Okay, so it'll take you about 60 minutes if you were to do a completely vertical, but again, I want you to do it at a 65-degree angle. And you're looking at about $6 to $8 per arch. And for your Crown and Bridge MFH, we have a shade conversion card that I can also share if you guys need a conversion chart. But there's 6 shades, and you can use those. They're cohesive, so you can use them for your temps too. You can bond them or cement them if you're not doing them for your dentures. And you're looking at about 60 cents a unit. It's approved for permanent denture teeth and long-term temporaries. So I'm going to give this to Neil. I'm going to pass this over to Neil, and he can release this to you upon request. But it's everything that I went through today on a hard copy, so you can see and refer back to this when you get back to the lab and doing everything. So I've got some photos in here of monoblock and people that have done a beautiful characterization with composites. This is a monoblock. So you can see that other view there. And then people that didn't do any characterization. Eric Kukuchka did this one. This is his patient that you guys all probably recognize, but I sent him our denture material, and those are the photos from that. And then a couple of references for you guys on the strength compared to the PMMA resin, or I'm sorry, standard denture material that we have. And then I wanted to show you just a couple of interesting things. What else are people doing? This is not something I'm recommending, but it'll get you going here on other things that people do with their Denture 3D Plus. You can see there's custom healing abutments, and I'm not saying that that's recommended, but it's going through clinical trials. And then we have over trilar bars, MFH custom healing abutments, excuse me, and immediates with Dr. Hartman again, and then shell temps and immediates again with a palatal seating jig. And that's it. So I will hand it over to George so he can show you the polishing part of it.
Awesome, Adrienne. Thank you. And this is Neil here, guys. I'm going to put my email address in the group chat here. So if you do want that presentation that Adrienne was showing just a moment ago, we're happy to provide it. Just shoot me an email after the event today, and I'll make sure you get it. As George is getting ready, any last minute questions here for Adrienne? If you don't ask them now, we can absolutely get to them later, but just want to give everybody an opportunity before we move on to finishing here. No, it doesn't look like it. Cool. Okay, George, are you ready to rock and roll?
I am.
Awesome. All right, take it away, man.
All right. So we're just talking about how we finished the beautiful work that we just saw from Adrienne. So I've got a few cases here, and we can show you what we do. So first off, trimming it. We were showing in the software yesterday how we were able to do things like festooning, but of course, a lot of people will still come from the old wax world where we like to overbuild and then reduce. So if you are going to grind this material, you should know that it turns into a very, very fine dust, like super fine. So you want to make sure that you're always doing this under suction. And I've found that a really nice fine tip burr is really good for that too. You can go a little bit rougher if you want to take off some more amounts of material, but then I would switch to a finer burr for doing the finishing work. So another thing that we also do when we're bonding the teeth in, a lot of times, especially the first few times you're doing it, you'll overfill the sockets. And when you go to press those teeth in there, it goes bloosh and makes a big mess everywhere. So for the first couple times, usually you can use a piece of paper towel or something like a temporary block of material. Wonderfill is another one. We also use condensation reaction putty, and sometimes that's also a good thing to just block out the tissue side so that if any material does run over, it doesn't go underneath in your tissue side and then ruin your day and have to print another one. There was a question earlier with respect to VEO with in the sockets. And we've actually done testing on that. We've been scanning them after we've been bonding them in there and comparing it to the original file and seeing exactly how much difference there is. And as Adrienne said, so long as you're using those minimums, you will stay within the normal tolerances. And so we've been getting very good results from that. And we didn't know initially. Another thing, and I'm sure Adrienne can feel free to unmute herself and yell at me here, but we do a couple things like we'll use a bit of a tack here when we hold the teeth in just to make sure that from transitioning it from our hands when we're placing it to inside the light oven, we're not going to be moving the tooth position too much. So that's one of those things that I'll just tack here a little bit on both sides just to make sure that that doesn't go. We might talk about some unofficial workflows after this, but the question about how well it polishes pretty much exactly the same. So I've got an example right here, and you can see that it is milled on one side and printed on the other side, and the surface finish is essentially the same. Like we get a very, very good surface finish from printed materials, just like you can get from traditional PMMAs. The polishing of it is very similar as well. We generally be using, you know, a rag wheel. So I really do like a regular rag wheel when it comes to that. For doing the fine interproximals, I like to do a nylon bristle brush, especially one with a fiber in the middle to keep it a little bit more hydrated. One thing to be careful about when you are doing these polishings is that this material will burn if it's dry. So we have to make sure that we're always keeping our slurry mix is nice and wet. So I like to have kind of a runny, chunky runny texture of my polishing medium. Whether you use pumice or resilience or any of those others, we found really good results with all of them. So the polished, again, we can really get into the depths of the palettes, and it's the same techniques as we use in regular dentures. We're using cones, we're using the geometries that we have to get to the hard to reach areas. All that to say, I have also been testing a lot with dry finishing and using other means of trying to get a really nice surface finish without having to go to the pumices. And there's not a lot of shortcuts there, but one that we kind of figured out when we were doing it was painting on the raw material like we saw Adrienne do. And this is probably a non-3D Systems approved workflow, but we found it works amazingly well. What we do is you take a very, very clean paintbrush and making sure your part is really clean. When you seat your teeth into the sockets, what we do is we use the paintbrush and we'll actually bring the material right down on the entire facial surface of both the gingiva and the teeth. So we'll go over both surfaces very, very lightly. And I have this little light cure tray full of just a little bit of material that I like to use here. We make sure that it's always kept well mixed because it will settle to the bottom after not too long. So what we'll do is we'll give it a quick once over glaze, but because it's raw printed material, we have to go back into the light cure oven for a full cure. So this is why sometimes we'll do this in conjunction with bonding the teeth in. So what I like to do is I like to bond the teeth in, tack it a little bit, and then with the excess that's flowed out the sides, this is where we can paint onto the rest of the teeth surfaces, as well as fill in any gaps that we might need. So that's what I have found to be really great. And I'm not sure how much 3D Systems like that, but the results are amazing. It comes out with a really high gloss finish shine, and I like it for the easiest possible out the door solution. Definitely mistakes when bonding. The biggest one is making sure that you have seated those teeth in the sockets fully. Sometimes you missed a support or something. So always, 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 before we go and bond those teeth in and put the material in, we do a dry fit. So we want to make sure that when we do those fits, that everything is looking like it's seating, there's no rock, everything is feeling nice and solid. That way we can be more assured that we're not going to be altering our VDO. Another thing too is when you want to make them pretty, and I know Adrienne showed a few really awesome examples there. We do have the full OptiGlaze kit for all the different colors, so you can really achieve some amazing results with the different colors that they have here. But you know, it is definitely technique sensitive. The first few times you do it, it didn't turn out perfectly, but you know, once you really get the handle of it, it's amazing that you can get almost a pre-manufactured tooth aesthetic out of a monochromatic tooth. So it's amazing the hand skills that you can utilize. Again, even though we're doing this as a digital workflow, there's still a lot of value in the hand flow skills. Let's see, another one of those unofficial tips and tricks is altering the tooth shades. So if you take some BL and you add a cap of N1 or N2 and do this as a separate mix, and this is something that we're testing. So I'm not going to say that this is a recommendation, but this is something that we're testing. And you know, there are patients that wanted a B1 tooth, and there isn't a B1 shade yet in the Nextdent lineup. So this is where we'll mix a BL with an N1 or an N2, and this is where we'll kind of get to a B1 shade. Again, something that isn't official. Same thing if you want to use water or glycerin in the light cure ovens. It's something that is not officially said, but is something that you could do if you're careful. But you know, one of the great things about the light cure ovens from 3D Systems is that they have a specific temperature that it needs to hit in order to have a full strength of the final cured part. And I think it's around 66 degrees if I'm not mistaken. So if you're going to be using glycerin or something like that, you want to do a double cure time, and that's to make sure that we're going to be maintaining that 60-degree temperature, because otherwise the liquid will act as a kind of insulated material and we're not going to hit those temperatures. So again, if you are going to be straying away from the recommended, make sure you're doing it carefully, you're testing it, and you're making sure that you're getting decent results out of it. Yeah, I am really, really happy with how easy this is to finish and how quickly we are able to get cases out the door. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to having even more tooth shades available. Right before noon, so I think we're right in time.
Nice. Yeah, you did a great job, man. So we've got a couple of questions here from the audience. One, I think, George, is going to be right up your alley from Ashley here. She's wondering, is there a certain technique that allows the interdental papilla and interproximals to be resin-filled versus the same shade as the teeth?
I have tested that and I did not get a good result. I always found a much better result when you use the gingiva material to do that. And a big mistake sometimes you make is we'll also fill that interproximal with the gum material. So this is where we have lots of paper towel nearby, and when we're using our paintbrush, we'll clean that out and wipe off the excess material, and then continue to do that for all the interproximals to keep the interproximals nice and clean. One of my early mistakes is I filled it and I cured it. And then you have to go back with a really, really fine burr and you have to grind it all out. And then what I did is a really quick paintbrush over to get that nice surface finish back. But it is a pain in the butt. I highly recommend you avoid doing that.
There you go. Looks like you might have saved Ashley some trouble there.